This is the Lean Builders Hoots on the Ground podcast with absolutely, positively no bullshito. Join us as we dig into exactly what lean construction is and how we can use these concepts and strategies in the field. This podcast will be different as we journey to job sites and mine the minds of lean builders, all in effort to pass forward building knowledge from those who have put their time in to learn a better way. Because that's just what lean builders do. Hey y'all, Adam Hoots here, the Lean Builder. Hoots on the Ground podcast, coming to you with an episode on trust. I can imagine this is going to turn into a couple episodes because I like to keep these a little bit more brief and to the point so folks can take them in on their way to the job sites. Trust has been on my mind a lot recently. In fact, I'm putting together a Lean Construction Institute's Congress abstract on trust and some tools that I've used in the past to help me build trust, create and maintain, and actually measure trust as well. Those are things that I think I'll leave for another episode, but my mind is really buried into Patrick Lencioni here recently. Jason Schroeder episode on vulnerability has really got me thinking about trust and the book 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, where everything is centered at that base or that foundation of trust. And then once we have that level of trust, then we can have some healthy conflict. And then once we have healthy conflict, then we have commitments to one another, and then we can hold each other accountable for results. And that's kind of the answer to the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team in Patrick Lencioni's book there. But everything starts with trust. And I think our industry focuses on one type of trust, and that's predictive trust. And we're not very good at the other side of trust, which is vulnerability-based trust. And so Patrick Lencioni talks a little bit about this as well, where he defines vulnerability-based trust as the ability to be open and honest and transparent and just who I am as a human being to your team. And versus predictive trust, which is like, hey, you're going to do what you say, and I've known you for so long that I can kind of predict that next move or what's about to happen. And so I think the distinguishing between those two types of trust is really important, and not weighing too heavy on one or the other, but having a good balance of trust there is important. And we do that through creating environments as leaders where people can share and be open and be vulnerable. Like I said, Jason Schroeder's episode, you could feel the love and the care and the compassion in that man's heart. And that's being a leader. That's creating this environment of just like, hey, we can be open, we can be transparent with one another, because we're going to have not just the predictive trust where I know that you're going to show up when I need you, but we also have the vulnerability-based trust where not only are you going to show up in the physical sense when I need you, but you're going to show up in the emotional sense when I need you as well. And you're going to be able to recognize that, right? Because not always is somebody going to be forthcoming with that information to just say, hey, I need to talk to you. No, you've got to see it in their eyes. You've got to see it in their face. You got to see it in their body movements and the words that they use, right? Intention is everywhere. And as a leader, when you're able to pick up those things, you create these safer environments. You create these conditions that just affirm people to be vulnerable again, that just builds that trust. Jen, Jesse, and myself did a blog for the Lean Construction blog on culture, and you all know how much I love that word. But again, in that blog, we talk about the Vtca cycle: vulnerability, trust, conditions, and affirmations. And it's really, you can hop on at any point. Yes, Katie Anderson. We could call it the CAVT cycle. The point is that there is a cycle, there is a process, there is a step-by-step guide that you can use to create a learning environment, to create an open environment that people can thrive in, and they can be just the best of who they are as an individual. When we do that as leaders, when we enable people to be themselves and be everything they can be, like, that's growth and that's learning, and that's how world and humanity gets better. And so when we're vulnerable, people trust us because we don't have anything to hide. There's no secrets out there. When we're vulnerable with information, even at the job site level, when we get that knowledge from the owner, right, and it's our job to spread that to all of our trade partners, but we hold tight to that information and we don't share that with everybody. I think it's important that leaders speak up first. I think that I'm going to set the tone as a leader on how vulnerable we're going to get, and damn it, I'm going to be 100% open. If I got some things going on, I'm going to talk to somebody. I'm going to clue somebody in, because people know. People are really smart. People know when we're sweating things before we know we're sweating things. People realize and understand even before you do. Like, they can see something that's wrong, but do you enable them to speak up as a leader? And again, that's where we get it wrong. Like, especially in construction, when we sit there in those trade partner meetings and, you know, we're like, hey, does anybody have anything? Like, no, seriously, do you have anything? Do you have anything for me? Versus like, all right, y'all, you know, that's all I got. I'm really, really curious. Like, tell me what's out there that I'm not thinking about. What's in my blind spot, y'all? What do y'all have? And the second part that I just did was even more important than asking the question, what do y'all have? It was stopping, reflecting, right? Allowing an answer, and then receiving that answer, listening to that answer. Like, these are all ways that we're building trust through action. When I look at you in the eyes, when I really, really listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth, and I'm able to process those, digest those, make statements back to you that indicate to you that I've heard you, that I've not just heard you, but I've understood you, and I've taken that and applied that from my perspective in life and what I've been going through in my experience, my data pool, right? There's a book called Leadership and Self-Deception. It's fantastic. It's the old Karate Kid. It is all internal, Danielson. Yeah, it's internal, right? Like, if you don't like what's going on around you, then change you in order to change what's going on around you, or your perception or perspective on what's going around you. Leaders that are open, leaders that are vulnerable with their teams, leaders that celebrate failure, right? Because we're failing forward. Those are the leaders that create environments that people just want to kill for them, right? We want to stay, and we want to work that extra hour of overtime. It's those type of people that Shannon Tomasco was talking about, that, hey, I'm going to work that extra hour of overtime because I care about my supervisor. I want to see us get this project done. My team members, like, I show up for my team. I think leaders need to do a better job at creating those environments, and not just creating those environments, but maintaining those environments and allowing people to thrive, again, just to be the best of the best. Now, again, I do think there could be some issues if we run around and we're a little bit too vulnerable, right? And by too vulnerable, I mean, like, hey, I messed that one up today. Way to go. Like, hey, I screwed that up. I effed that up. Like, whoops, didn't mean to do that one. Oops. Yeah, like, okay, time out. Like, and maybe that's not even a vulnerability issue. Maybe that's a competence problem that we need to really go back and look at. And so, yeah, again, the Emperor with No Clothes, that story really comes to mind for those of you who haven't heard it. You know, there was an emperor far, far away, long time ago, who just loved his clothes, his outfits, and he used to show up every day with a better outfit, never wore the same thing twice. And, you know, word spread far, far away to these two scoundrels who wanted to fool the king, and went to the king's court and said, oh, we have these threads, you know, they're made with the finest of stuff, and here they are, and aren't they beautiful? Don't you want to buy these? And so, not wanting to look like a fool, the king's court was like, oh yeah, they're beautiful, oh my gosh, we got to introduce them to the king. And so the king's court took these this invisible fabric up to the king and said, "Hey, king, don't you love these? Like, aren't these beautiful?" And the king's like, "Oh my gosh," not wanting to look like a moron, because only fools could not see the invisible threads. He said, "Oh yeah, they're beautiful, vibrant colors and blah, yeah." And so the next day he put them on and decided to have a procession around the town. And it was going well, and got about halfway through the city, and a voice from the crowd, everybody was kind of like whispering, talking, and there a little boy in the crowd speaks up and goes, "That king's not wearing anything." And before you know it, the whole town was like, "Oh yeah, he's not wearing anything." And so, the point of the story is, those who don't speak up could be allowing you to prance around naked in front of the people who you most certainly don't want to be naked in front of. And so, do you enable people to speak up? You will never be able to see all of your flaws. In fact, that's the purpose. That's why you have a team of leaders, of individuals, of high performers around you. I've heard that a lot, right? You're the sum of the 5 or 7 closest people to you in your life. And so I find that to be very much the case, very true. There's so many things that I want to dive into, but I do want to keep these a little bit on the shorter side. Next episode, I'm going to dive into some of the different tools that we're able to use to really drive trust on our projects, how to create trust on our projects. Look, let's face it, for a long time, GC subcontractor relationships have been very much an us versus mentality, and really heavy on the predictability trust and light on the vulnerability trust. Honestly, not a lot of our trade partners have been put in an environment where GC actually cares about them and is creating a safe place for the betterment of the project. At first, this can feel a little uncomfortable, almost like, what does this person want from me? Why do they keep making sure I'm good? Like, I'm not used to this love right now. And so it can be a little uncomfortable. Maybe in a future episode, that's one thing we'll talk about, is the comfort zone and how important it is to get out of our comfort zone, to get through the fear zone into the learning and growth zones. But so, creating an environment of trust is super important. It starts with self-awareness and understanding how other people see you, which is best done through being vulnerable, being open, creating environments where people feel empowered to speak up and speak out and really just speak their mind. Because if one person's thinking it, then quite honestly, there's multiple people that are probably thinking it, or maybe can't quite put their tongues on it. That was really the purpose of this episode, was to create an environment of trust that starts with self-awareness, for folks to understand the differences between predictive and vulnerability trust. The next one, we're going to dive into the art of questioning, holding people accountable. Man, I think we're spinning off a bunch of other podcasts out of this one here. The art of teaching and learning, humble inquiry versus advocacy, total participation, as my man Jason Schroeder says often. Again, some just easy tools on how to build trust on your jobs, how to create and maintain trust, and also how to measure trust, and understanding the relationships between team members and how important that is and how that impacts our work. Episode's really been focused on being vulnerable. People will trust you. Create this cycle of vulnerability to trust, and then you create those conditions to allow for affirmations, and that process continues and repeats itself and eventually builds outward until you partner more and more people into that circle, where we can really start opening it up, not just as an individual, not just as a team, and not even just as an organization, but when we can open our organizations, teams, and individuals up, then we can build an industry that really cares about our workers, about our people, about our boots on the ground, the people who are spending way too many hours in the trailers, who are up early, walking job sites, who are staying late, closing down job sites, turning the heat on, closing the doors, sweeping up that last pile that didn't get any attention or love the day before. And so I really encourage you to think about trust, think about it from two perspectives. What are you doing on your job sites to really encourage trust, to encourage openness, to encourage people to speak up when they don't see something that looks quite right, that looks like the standard that has been set? Because creating open environments where people can just be authentically themselves, that's what lean builders do. That's what we do. We connect people. We bring the best out of people, always. We empower, we encourage, we educate, we equip people to do their jobs better, or as my buddy Felipe says, we empower them to work easier, better, and faster in construction. And so the EBFC show, that's what lean builders do. Felipe, when are we going to get you on here, man? Call me out on the Laying Foundations podcast. My goodness, my man. All love, though. I know you're challenging me to be a better me. Man, I love that about you. Got to get you on here. You are the epitome of a lean builder, and this is your challenge, man. Let's make it happen. Weird way to end the one on trust. I trust that you enjoyed this. I trust this content is providing value to you, and would love any and all feedback that you are willing to give. It will be received with open arms, open embraced. I am an open and transparent environment, and would love to just continue to get better and improve on my day-to-day with you, the Lean Builder Nation. Hoots on the ground, signing out. We'll talk soon, because that's what lean builders do.